Howdy there, folks. Name's Grandpa Joe, and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Sleepy Storyteller. Ta-ta! Now, I ain't no fancy city fella. I'm just an old cowboy with a million stories in my back pocket. Some are wild, some are funny, some might even kick you straight in the heart. I'll be telling you tales from my life, adventures, mistakes, lessons learned the hard way, with a little bit of cowboy wisdom and a whole lot of laughs. So buckle up, kiddo. Hit that subscribe button and let old Grandpa Joe spin you a yarn or two. Yee-haw! Let's ride. Well now, pull up a stool, kiddo, and hand me that bottle. No, not the coffee, the one with the kick. That's the one. A man needs a little fortification to tell a tale of his own foolishness. And let me tell you, this one's a doozy. It's about the time I almost lost old Duke, the best damn quarter horse this side of the Mississippi, all on account of the green-eyed monster they called greed. Back in my day, we took care of our animals before we took care of ourselves. A man's horse was his partner, his confidant, his ticket out of trouble. Yee-haw! Let's ride! Duke was all that and more. Had a coat the color of wet chestnut and eyes that understood English better than most people. We'd been through droughts, a couple of stampedes, and one very confused coyote who thought he could hitch a ride. We were a team. Then came the great hay fiasco. Ta-ta-ta! Old man Henderson down the road got a shipment of this fancy highfalutin alfalfa hay. Looked like it was groomed by a Hollywood barber. My usual stuff, the good prairie hay from Jensen's farm, was perfectly fine. A little coarse, maybe, but it filled the belly. But that devil on my shoulder, he started whispering. "Joe," he says. Sounded a lot like my ex-wife, bless her heart. "Why you paying top dollar when you can get Henderson's last season's batch for half the price? It's just a little dusty. Duke won't know the difference. Think of the money you'll save." Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit. I was gonna save my way right into the poorhouse. I bought the cheap hay, brought it home, and even I could tell it was sorry. It was brittle, pale, and had the aroma of a forgotten attic. Duke took one sniff, gave me a look of pure betrayal, and nibbled at it like it was a personal insult. I figured he was just being fussy. "You'll eat it when you're hungry enough, you stubborn mule," I told him. Ain't that a kick in the head? For 3 days he picked at that sorry excuse for feed. He'd look at me with those big, sorrowful eyes, and I'd just look away, whistling, acting like I didn't see the ribs starting to show. I was counting the pennies I was saving, feeling right clever. Hot diggity dog! On the 4th morning, I came out with his breakfast, and the corral was empty. The gate was swung wide open. Now Duke was smarter than a 5th grader. He knew how that latch worked. This wasn't an accident. This was a resignation letter. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. Panic hit me like a bucket of cold water. My heart sank lower than a snake's belly in a wagon rut. I took off on foot, calling his name till my voice was rougher than a gravel road. Nothing. Dadgummit. I spent the whole day searching, my mind conjuring up every terrible thing. Every penny I'd saved felt like a lead weight in my pocket. Just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors you only see in dreams, I had a thought. I trudged, tired and defeated, over to Jensen's farm. And there, in the golden light, standing in Jensen's pristine pasture like he owned the place, was Duke. Well, shut my mouth wide open. His nose was buried deep in a pile of Jensen's beautiful green, expensive hay. He was chomping away, happier than a pig in mud. He looked up when he heard me, a strand of the good stuff dangling from his mouth. He didn't look guilty. He looked satisfied. Made his point clearer than any lawyer. I'll tell you what, old man Jensen just tipped his hat and said, "Found him loitering around the hay barn this morning, Joe. Looked hungry, so I fed him." I paid Jensen for the Bale Duke at Eaton, bought 2 more of his finest, and loaded that cheap hay into my truck to use as mulch. Never again, I tell you, never again. So, the moral of the story, kiddo, and you listen to your Grandpa Joe, you can't cheap out on what matters. Whether it's hay for your horse, boots for your feet, or whiskey for your soul, skimp on the foundation and the whole darn house comes tumbling down. Duke taught me that. Cost me a day's worry and 3 bales of the good hay to learn it. Ain't that something? Now pour me another finger, would you? This wisdom's drying my throat out, something fierce. This one's for you, Duke, you clever old nag. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. You want to hear about the first time I almost shot my own foot off? Ta-ta-ta. Now that's a story that'll make you think twice before showing off. Hand me that bottle, kiddo. This one requires a stiff drink just to remember the embarrassment. Ain't that something? Back in my day, being a man meant you had a good horse, a good hat, and a good gun. I'd saved up nickels and dimes from mending fences for what felt like 100 years. Finally, I marched into the general store and laid down my hard-earned cash for a shiny new Colt single-action army. Yee-haw! Let's ride! Oh, she was a beaut. Blued steel that shone like a midnight pond, and a grip of polished walnut that felt like it was made for my hand. I felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I couldn't just walk home with it. No, sir. I had to make an event of it. I strapped that leather holster on so low I was darn near knocking my knee with it. Hot diggity dog. I strutted out of that store posing and preening, just hoping someone would look my way. I felt like the king of the whole dadgum frontier. My first stop had to be the saloon, of course. Well, shut my mouth wide open, the place was packed. There was old Jed and the Miller boys, and even Sally Ann from the diner was there, slicing up pie. This was my moment. I was gonna be a legend. I should have just ordered a sarsaparilla and kept my mouth shut. But no. The devil on my shoulder, probably the same one from the hay incident, started whispering. "Go on, Joe," he said. "Show 'em what you got. Spin it. Make 'em holler." So I put on my best smirk, like some kind of riverboat gambler. "Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit," I announced to the whole room. "Take a gander at this piece of American craftsmanship." I went for the fancy draw. The plan was to pull that iron out, give it a flashy spin on my finger, and slide it right back into the holster smoother than butter. I'd seen a fella do it in a penny dreadful. Looked easy enough. Dadgummit. What happened next wasn't in the book. I yanked that revolver out all right, but my thumb slipped on the hammer. Instead of a smooth spin, it was more of a clumsy, heavy flail. The weight of the thing surprised me. It was a tool, not a toy. My finger, in all the panic and excitement, must have found the trigger. Bang! The sound was louder than a thunderclap in a tin shed. The whole saloon went dead quiet. Smoke curled up from the end of the barrel, and for a second I felt nothing. Then a hot, searing pain shot right through my left foot. I looked down. There was a neat, smoking hole right through the toe of my brand new boot. Well, I'll be. I'd gone and ventilated my own footwear. For a second, nobody moved. Then old Jed burst out laughing so hard he fell off his stool. Pretty soon, the whole place was roaring. My face turned a shade of red I'm sure ain't natural. Sally Ann just shook her head, handed me a rag for my pride more'n my foot, and said, "Bless your heart, Joe. I think your ego's hurt worse than your toe." I had to walk home with a hole in my boot, a hole in my sock, and the biggest dadgum hole in my pride you ever did see. And let me tell you, every snicker from behind a fence on the way home felt like another bullet. Never again, I tell you. Never again. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you listen good. Ponson is expensive. A little bit of quiet confidence will get you a lot further than a whole truckload of showboating. That revolver taught me more about humility in 5 seconds than I'd learned in 15 years. Cost me a new... Well now, kiddo, you're digging deep into the archives tonight, ain't you? Pull up that old stump. This ain't a story about being tough. It's a story about being scared. And about learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. Ain't that something? Back in my day, I thought I knew every canyon and coulee within a 50-mile radius of this very porch. Felt like I had a map of the whole territory right behind my eyes. Me and my old mare, Bessie, bless her heart, she's grazing in the big pasture in the sky now. We decided to chase a rumor of some stray cattle up north towards the Badlands. Now, the weather out here, well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. It changes its mind faster than a politician at election time. 1 minute the sky's clear as a bell. The next, a wall of fog rolls in thicker than pea soup. And this wasn't any ordinary fog. This was a proper high plains special, cold and damp, swallowing up the world whole. Dadgummit, couldn't see my hand in front of my face. Every juniper bush looked like a monster, every rock a cliff. Bessie, she got spooked, started snorting and sidestepping. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer. I started pushing her, thinking I knew the way. Yee-haw, let's ride, I thought. Gotta keep moving, gotta do something. We rode for what felt like hours. My panic was piling up higher than a stack of hay bales. Every direction looked the same, just more gray, more nothing. The sun was gone, the landmarks were gone, my dang sense of direction was gone. I was well and truly lost. Hot diggity dog, that's a feeling that'll freeze your blood colder than a winter creek. I was about to give Bessie another nervous kick when something in my old bones just quit, ran out of gas. The fight just drained right out of me. I slid out of that saddle, my legs shaking like a newborn colt, and I just sat my backside down right there on the cold, hard ground. Felt like I'd failed, like the prairie itself had beaten me. Ta-ta-ta! That's when it happened. When I stopped thrashing around, when I stopped my own frantic noise, the world started talking to me. I took a deep breath, shut my mouth wide open, and I just listened. The wind, which I hadn't paid no mind to, was whispering. It had a different sound as it slid through the grass to the east of me than it did whistling through a rocky draw to the west. I could hear the distant cry of a hawk, and I remembered they liked to nest in the cliffs south of here. And then I felt it. A real, subtle, gentle shift in the air on my face. It was warmer, just a touch, and that was it. That was the map. Not one I could see, but one I could hear and feel. That little warm breeze, that was coming from the valley. Our valley. Home. I wasn't lost anymore. I was just misplaced. I got up, calm as you please, patted Bessie's neck and said, "All right, girl, let's go home." We walked slow, me following that feeling on my cheek like it was a tug on a string. I'll tell you what, within an hour the fog lifted just enough to show the familiar silhouette of Saddleback Ridge, right where that warm breeze was coming from. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you remember this when life gets foggy, sometimes you gotta be still to get your bearings. All that rushing and panic, That's just you getting in your own way. The answers are usually whispering all around you. You just gotta have the sense to quit yelling long enough to hear 'em. Never again, I tell you, never again will I let panic do my thinking for me. This old world knows where it's going. Our job is just to sit down, shut up, and listen for the directions. Ain't that something? Now pour a little more of that coffee in here, would you? All this remembering is powerful, thirsty work. Well now, kiddo, you're taking a tour of all my greatest failures tonight, ain't you? This one stings a little deeper than a hole in a boot. This here's a story about losing a fight against the dumbest opponent I ever faced. My own mirror reflection. Ain't that something? Back in my day, a man was measured by his word, his work, and his luck at the card table. And I had a string of luck so long it felt like I'd lassoed a rainbow. Hot diggity dog. I was the king of the Friday night game down at the old bunkhouse. Thought I had the Midas touch. Couldn't lose if I tried. Then came the big game. A real high-stakes affair with a cattle baron from Abilene named Lucky Lucius Blackwood. Man wore a suit finer than my Sunday best and had a smile colder than a well-digger's backside. The pot, well, shut my mouth wide open. The pot wasn't just money. It was my entire summer's wages, my prize silver belt buckle, and the deed to my favorite old rifle, Sweetheart. I was all in, feeling invincible. The cards were dealt. I peeked at my hand. Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit, a pair of deuces. Nothing. A hand flatter than a pancake on a wagon wheel. But I had a feeling. A hot, stupid feeling in my gut that screamed, this is it. The river card was coming. Luck was going to save me. Yee-haw! Let's ride. Old Jed, who was sitting to my left, he kicked my boot under the table. A warning. Joe, he muttered, the only thing you're betting on is your own funeral. But I couldn't hear him. The dadgum arrogance had plugged my ears up tighter than a cork in a bottle. Lucius just watched me, that icy smile never leaving his face. He saw the desperation in my eyes, the blind hope. He knew, oh, he knew. He smooth-called my bet like he was ordering a glass of milk. The river card hit the table. It was a 7. Meant nothing to nobody. My pair of deuces sat there, looking as pathetic and lonely as I felt. My heart, which was pounding like a stam. Lucius didn't even smirk. He just laid his cards down, one by one. A straight. 7 to Jack. It wasn't a monster hand, but it was a real hand, a smart hand. It beat my nothing. It beat my everything. The silence in that room was heavier than a wet saddle. I pushed my pile of cash, my buckle, and the deed to Sweetheart across that scarred wooden table. My hands were shaking. I felt sick. I'd been so busy betting on a miracle, I forgot to use the brain the good Lord gave me. Ta-ta-ta! The sound of Lucius stacking my chips was the loudest, most miserable sound I ever heard. So, the moral of the story, kiddo, and you carve this into your soul. Luck is a fickle friend, but a fool is a permanent roommate. Gambling ain't about magic, it's about math. It's about knowing when to hold 'em, and for Pete's sake, knowing when to walk away. Never again, I tell you, never again. Excitement is a blinding fog. A clear head is the only compass you got in this world. That was the last time I ever let the thrill do my thinking for me. Cost me my rifle, my pride, and a whole lot of money to learn that the hardest hand to read ain't your opponent's, it's the one holding the mirror. Ain't that something? Now, hand me that bottle. This particular memory needs a powerful lot of watering down.
You've gone and dug up the tale of the great bull versus the idiot. And the idiot, I'm ashamed to say, was looking back at me from the water trough. Ain't that something? Hand me that liniment while you're at it. Just smelling it takes me right back. Back in my day, we didn't have these fancy video games. Our entertainment was a lot more direct. I was 16, maybe 17, all piss and vinegar with more muscles in my mouth than in my back. Hot diggity dog, I was gonna be a legend. There was a bull on the ranch named Lucifer. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. That beast was put on this earth for one reason: to spread misery. Big as a freight train, black as sin, with a set of horns that looked like they could open a can of stubbornness from 50 paces. He'd stare you down with eyes that held not a single thought, just a deep, profound annoyance at your existence. All the seasoned hands knew to give Lucifer a wide berth. They'd just nod and say, "He's his own problem, Joe. Leave him be." But me, yeehaw, let's ride. I took that as a challenge. I was going to be the hero who tamed the beast. I'd seen the picture of a matador once, all fancy and red. I didn't have a red cape, but I had my pa's best red plaid shirt. I thought that was the secret. Dadgummit, was I wrong. I hopped that fence with all the grace of a newborn giraffe. I waved that shirt around, hootin' and hollerin', thinking I was the king of the world. Lucifer stopped chewing his cud. He didn't charge, he just sighed. It was the most insulting thing, like I wasn't even worth getting mad about. Then he lowered that big ugly head and took 2 steps forward. Just 2. Well, shut my mouth wide open. The ground shook. My bravery, which felt so big a second ago, shriveled up like a raisin in the sun. I froze. That was my first mistake. My second was tripping over my own dang feet trying to back up. The next thing I knew, the world was a whirling tornado of dirt, sky, and angry black fur. He didn't gore me, bless his heart, no. That would have required effort. He just used that big noggin like a shovel, scooped me up, gave me a toss, and sent me flying through the air like a poorly thrown hay bale. I landed in the one spot that was softer than the rest, a fresh, fragrant, and incredibly deep pile of, well, let's just call it organic compost. I'll tell you what, it broke my fall, but it shattered my dignity into a million pieces. I didn't break any bones, but oh, the ache, the profound, deep in your soul ache. I couldn't sit down for a week. Had to sleep on my belly, eating my meals, standing up like a horse at a trough. Every time I tried to sit, a little memory of Lucifer's contempt would shoot right up my spine. Never again, I tell you, never again. So, the moral of the story, kiddo, and you listen to your Grandpa Joe. Courage without a brain is just a fancy way to get yourself hurt. A real man knows the difference between being brave and being a darn fool. It's got to be a partnership, see? A little bit of guts, but a whole lot of sense. Ta-ta-ta. Otherwise, you're just providing entertainment for the livestock. That bull taught me more about humility in 5 seconds than I'd learned in 16 years. Cost me a week of sitting on a pillow in my pa's best shirt to learn it. Ain't that something? Now, hand me that bottle. This story's making my old bones ache. This one's for you, Lucifer, you miserable, magnificent cuss. This one ain't about foolishness. This one's about loyalty. And it's about the day I learned that the biggest heart don't always come in the fanciest package. Ain't that something? This here's the story of my old dog, Bandit. Back in my day, Bandit was my shadow. For 14 years, that dog was right there with me. Through blizzards, through droughts, through my own dumb mistakes, like that time with the cheap hay. He was a border collie, smart as a whip and faster than gossip. But time, well, time gets us all, don't it? In his last year, Bandit was slow, mighty slow. His muzzle had gone from black to sugar white. His hips were stiff, and he had a hitch in his giddy-up that'd break your heart. He'd rather snooze on the porch in the sun than chase a rabbit. Bless his heart. I'd sometimes pat his head and say, "You've earned your rest, old-timer." And I'll admit it, kiddo. I started seeing him as old, as past it. I stopped expecting much from him. Dadgummit, that was my mistake. It was a hot afternoon, still as a painting. I was mending a fence post out by the dry creek bed. Bandit was laying in a patch of shade, snoring away. I was so focused on whacking that post in, I wasn't paying any mind to the world around me. Ta-ta-ta! I went to grab a fresh nail from my leather pouch on the ground. My hand was inches away when I heard it. Not a bark, not a growl. It was a sound I'd never heard Bandit make before. A low, raw, guttural snarl that seemed to tear out of his old chest. I froze, and that's when I saw it. Coiled right next to my nail pouch, darker than shadow, was a diamondback rattler. Thick as my wrist. Its head was drawn back, its tail buzzing like a devil's rattle, ready to send all its poison right into my hand. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. My blood turned to ice. Before I could even blink, a blur of black and white shot past me. It was Bandit. But it wasn't the slow, limping Bandit of the porch. It was the ghost of the dog he used to be, all fire and lightning. "Yeehaw, let's ride!" He didn't bark. He didn't hesitate. He launched his old aching body straight at that snake. There was a tussle, a furious whirl of dust and fury. The snake struck. I heard Bandit yelp, a short, sharp cry. Then he chomped down once, hard, and shook his head. When it was over, the snake was done for, and Bandit was standing over it, panting, his leg bleeding from a nasty bite. Then, just like that, the fire went out of him. He looked at me, gave a little wag of his tail as if to say, "Well, shut my mouth wide open, that was a close one." And then he just laid down right there, tired and hurt. I'll tell you what, I carried him all the way back to the house, my heart heavier than a sack of anvils. We got him to the vet in time, and the old fighter pulled through. But he was never quite the same after that. Gave me a few more good months of porch snoozing. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you etch this deep, don't you ever mistake slow for useless or gray for done. The old ones, the slow ones, they've got a wisdom and a courage that runs deeper than any young pup's speed. They've got nothing left to prove, and that makes them braver than any of us. Never again, I tell you, never again will I underestimate someone just because they've got a few more miles on the clock. That old dog saved my life with the last bit of strength he had. He taught me that true strength ain't in the muscle, it's in the heart. Ain't that something? This one's for you, Bandit, you old magnificent hero. Now, you've gone and unlocked the vault to my most humiliating and wonderful memory. This ain't a story of heroics. It's a story of a fool trying to fly for a pretty girl and landing face first in reality. Ain't that something? Hand me that cup. This one needs a sweetener. Back in my day, the county fair was everything. The lights, the smell of candy apples, the roar of the crowd, and the girls. Well, shut my mouth wide open, the girls in their summer dresses could make a young fella's heart forget its own rhythm. I was 18, maybe 19. All arms and legs and nervous energy, thinking I was God's gift to the state of Texas. That's when I saw her, Clara.
Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit. She had hair the color of wheat in the sunset and a smile that could melt a glacier. She was standing by the prize-winning hogs with her friends, and I decided right then and there I had to impress her. Yee-haw, let's ride. My brain, being empty of any actual good ideas, decided the best course of action was to show off my athleticism. See, there was a fella demonstrating a new kind of plow nearby, and he had a couple of his big old workhorses hitched up, and right behind them was a fresh, fragrant pile of, well, let's call it country perfume. I figured I'd do a run and jump, clear the pile, land gracefully on the other side, tip my hat, and win her heart forever. A brilliant plan. What could possibly go wrong? Ta-ta-ta! I took a running start, my eyes locked on Clara. I could see her looking over, a curious little frown on her face. This was it, my moment. I pushed off with all my might, soaring through the air like a majestic, well, like a turkey that's forgotten how to fly. Dadgummit. My boot heel caught on the top of that pile. Instead of soaring, I was stumbling. Instead of grace, I was all panic. For a glorious second, I was a windmill of arms and legs, fighting gravity with every ounce of my being. And then I lost. I landed flat on my back, right in the middle of it. There was a soft, wet "Tomorrow," she said, her eyes still smiling. "Come find me tomorrow. When you smell less interesting, I'll tell you what, I walked home that night stinking to high heaven, but my feet never touched the ground." So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you remember this when you see a pretty smile. Trying to be someone you ain't just makes you a clown. The right person will find the real you interesting enough, even if you ain't always graceful. Never again, I tell you, never again will I try to be a fancy peacock. A simple, honest rooster does just fine. She saw me at my absolute worst, and she still gave me a chance. Ended up marrying that girl, your Grandma Clara. Ain't that something? Now, this one's for her. Pass me that pie, would you, kiddo? All this talking's made me nostalgic. And tell your grandma I said she's still as pretty. Well now, kiddo, you've stumbled onto the secret ingredient of this whole darn ranch. It ain't in the beans. It's right here. Ain't that something? This is the story of how I learned to brew something far more important than coffee. Back in my day, right after me and your Grandma Clara got hitched, I was greener than spring grass and twice as awkward. I wanted to be a good host, a proper man of the house, and a proper man, I figured, made a pot of coffee that could put hair on your chest and ambition in your heart. Well, shut my mouth wide open. Was it terrible? My first batch? Dadgummit, I used enough grounds to choke a mule and let it boil on the stove till it was thicker than crude oil and twice as black. It didn't so much pour as ooze into the cup. You could have tarred a roof with it. A spoon could stand up straight in it. I'll be a monkey's uncle. But I was proud. I'd made it myself. The boys would come by, old Jed, the Miller twins, sometimes the sheriff when he was out our way. They'd amble up onto this very porch, dusty and tired. I'd puff out my chest and pour 'em a cup of my special blend. Ta-ta-ta! I'd watch 'em take that first sip. Their eyes would water. Their mustaches would twitch. Jed's whole face would scrunch up like a prune. There'd be a long, dangerous silence. And then one of 'em would cough, slam the cup down, and say, "Well, Joe, that's got a real kick to it." Another would nod, grimacing like he'd just bitten a lemon. "Ain't that something? Strong enough to wake the dead, I reckon."
"Yee-haw, let's ride!" the third would croak, his voice rough from the scalding tar. And then they'd keep drinking it, every last bitter drop. They'd sit there, wincing and telling stories, complaining about the weather and the price of cattle, all the while nursing my terrible, horrible, no-good coffee. Took me a few weeks of this peculiar torture before I finally caught on. Old Jed was rinsing his cup at the water trough after one particularly vicious brew. He saw me looking disappointed. "I'll tell you what, after that, I paid a lot more attention to how your grandma did it. I learned to measure the grounds, to not let it boil over. It got better, a lot better. But them boys, they still sometimes get a faraway look in their eye when I pour a fresh cup, a little flash of fear. Ain't that something?" So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you brew this deep into your soul, it ain't about how good you are at something. It's about sharing it with the right people. Life's too short to drink bad coffee alone. But good company can make even the worst pot taste like a blessing. Never again, I tell you, never again will I think the drink is more important than the hands that hold the cup. Now, pass me that pot, would ya? This one's for Jed and the Miller boys, and all the friends who suffered through my brew just to share a sunset. Hot diggity dog, those were the days. Well now, kiddo, you're digging into the chapter about the time my wallet got lighter and my brain got a whole lot heavier. Ain't that something? This ain't a story about a fair fight. It's about a spider and a fly. And I was the fly. Yee-haw, let's ride. Straight into a trap. Back in my day, I fancied myself a bit of a card player. Nothing serious, mind you, just the Friday night game with the boys, where the biggest loss was your dignity after the third bottle of whiskey. I knew the odds, I knew the tells, or so I thought. I was in a saloon in some dusty town whose name I've forgotten, probably on purpose. The air was thick with smoke and the clink of glasses. And that's when I saw him. A fella calling himself Silky Sam. Well, shut my mouth wide open, he looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog. A suit sharper than a rattlesnake's tooth, a smile that could charm the spots off a leopard, and hands so smooth they made silk look rough. He was telling stories, buying drinks, and his words, dadgummit, they were smoother than good bourbon. He talked about luck and destiny, and how he could see a winner's glint in my eye. "You've got an honest face, friend," he purred. "A man can trust a face like that." Bless his heart, I swelled up like a bullfrog. I felt chosen. We sat down for a simple game of 5-card draw, just me and him. Ta-ta-ta! The first few hands I won, just small pots. Enough to make me feel smart, to make me think I had his number. Silky Sam just smiled, a patient, gentle smile. Hot diggity dog, I thought, this city fella ain't so tough. Then came the big hand. I was dealt a pair of kings, a real powerhouse. I bet big. Silky Sam just called, his face a mask of friendly concern. "You sure about that, partner?" "That's a mighty bold wager," he said, sounding like he was worried for my money. The draw. I took 3 cards, hoping for that third king. He took 1. I'll be a monkey's uncle. I didn't get my king. But I didn't care. He'd only drawn 1 card. What could he possibly have? He must be bluffing. I went all in. Every last cent I had on me. My whole month's pay from driving cattle. Silky Sam gave a sad little sigh, like he was disappointed in me. "A shame," he said softly. "I really did like you." Then he laid down his cards. He'd been sitting on 3 little deuces, and that 1 card he drew, the 4th deuce. The room spun. He hadn't been bluffing. He hadn't been lucky. He'd been playing me from the moment I walked in. The stories, the drinks, the honest face, it was all bait. He'd let me win just enough to make me hungry. He knew a country boy with a big ego was the easiest mark in the world. He took my money, tipped his fancy hat, and was gone into the night before the truth even settled in my gut. I'll tell you what, I felt colder than a well digger's backside. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you brand this on your brain: trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. A sweet talker is often peddling sour goods. The world is full of silky Sams with beautiful words and empty hearts. Never again, I tell you, never again. You gotta look past the smile and watch the hands. You gotta trust, but you gotta verify. That fella didn't just take my money. He gave me a $100 lesson for free. The cheapest, most valuable thing in the world is a little bit of healthy suspicion. Ain't that something? Now, pour me a shot of the cheap stuff. This memory deserves nothing finer. You've gone and found the one story that don't have a hole in a boot or a face full of manure at the end of it. This one's about the first time I ever felt like a man. Ain't that something? Pull that stool in closer. I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Couldn't have been more than 10 years old. My old man, your great-granddad, he was tougher than a $2 steak and believed work built character. Back in my day, we didn't get allowances for breathing. If you wanted a penny for licorice, you earned it. It was the summer the big drought hit. The creek ran lower than a snake's belly, and the well on the North 40, the one the hands used, was about to give up the ghost. The cattle were thirsty. Dadgummit, everything was thirsty. My pa came to me one morning, his face serious. "Joe," he said, "I got a job that needs doing. It ain't glamorous, but it's honest. I'll pay you a nickel for it. A whole nickel." Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit. My eyes got bigger than silver dollars. I was already rich. The job was this: take 2 buckets, walk down to the creek, fill 'em up, and carry 'em back to the trough by the north well. Then do it again and again, all day long. Well, shut my mouth wide open. That creek wasn't close. By my 10th trip, my shoulders were screaming, my hands were raw, and my little legs felt like lead weights. The sun beat down on me like a hammer on an anvil. That nickel started looking smaller and smaller. But I saw the hands. I saw 'em watching me. This scrawny kid, red-faced and determined, dragging these buckets that were near as big as I was. They didn't laugh. They'd just nod, tip their hats. One of 'em, old Jed, even took his bandana off and handed it to me without a word. And I saw the cattle. I saw 'em crowd around that trough after I filled it, drinking deep, their big, gentle eyes closed in relief. I wasn't just carrying water. I was carrying relief. I was important. Yee! That evening, I dragged my sorry self back to the house. I was covered in dust and creek water, and I smelled like a wet goat. My pa was waiting on the porch. He didn't say a word, just held out his hand. And in his palm was the shiniest, most beautiful nickel I have ever seen in my whole dang life. I'll tell you what, I took that nickel, and I thought my heart would burst. I felt taller than the barn. I'd earned that. I'd worked for it. It wasn't the money. It was what it meant. I didn't spend it on licorice. I kept it in my pocket for a year, just feeling it, reminding myself what I'd done. Ta-ta-ta. That little piece of metal was worth more to me than any $1 million lottery win.
So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you listen close, don't you ever scoff at a small job done with big pride. The value ain't in the size of the paycheck. It's in the sweat on your brow and the ache in your back. You learn to appreciate the nickels, and the dollars will take care of themselves. Never again, I tell you, never again will I think any honest work is beneath me. That nickel taught me more about being a man than any fancy speech ever could. Ain't that something? Now, hand me that pie. All this remembering has worked up an honest appetite. This one's for my pa for giving me that first hard-earned nickel. This ain't a story about foolish pride. It's about the time mine near got me killed, and the folks I thought least of were the ones who pulled me back from the edge. Ain't that something? This one's heavy. Hand me that bottle. Back in my day, I was a proud man. Too proud. Thought I knew these mountains better than anyone. Thought I was tough as old boots and didn't need nobody. Especially not them. Them was a group of city folk who'd set up a camp at the base of the ridge. They were artists or writers or something. Well, shut my mouth wide open. They had fancy boots that ain't never seen mud and talked about the sublime beauty of nature. I'd ride by their camp, see 'em huddling around a meager fire, and I'd just snort. Dadgummit, I called 'em tenderfeet, and worse, thought they were a disgrace to the wilderness. Bless their hearts, I figured they'd last a day. I decided to go up into the high country to check my traps. The sky was clear, the sun was out. I didn't need no extra gear. Yeehaw, let's ride. I was invincible. But the weather up here, well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. It's a fickle beast. A blue sky can turn into a howling white hell faster than you can spit. A wind picked up, colder than a witch's kiss. Then the snow came, not a gentle fall, a blinding, screaming blizzard that swallowed the world whole. Suddenly, my knowing these mountains didn't mean a thing. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. My horse spooked, threw me, and bolted, left me there, alone, in nothing but my denim jacket and my arrogance. Hot diggity dog, I was in a heap of trouble. I stumbled for what felt like hours. The cold was a pain like fire, searing my lungs with every breath. My fingers went numb, my feet felt like blocks of ice. I started seeing things in the snow. I knew what was happening. The cold was talking to me, telling me to just sit down, to rest. I'll tell you what, it was a mighty tempting offer. Just as I was about to give up, to let the white blanket take me, I saw it. A flicker, orange and weak through the sheets of snow. A fire. I used the last bit of strength I had, crawling on my hands and knees toward that light like a drowning man to air. I fell right into the edge of their camp, those same tender feet. They didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions. They just moved. Ta-ta-ta. Two of them grabbed me under my arms, dragging me closer to the fire. Another wrapped a thick wool blanket around my shoulders, a blanket from their own bedroll. One of the women, her hands were soft, but she rubbed my frozen hands with a determination I'd never seen, her breath puffing in the cold air. They forced a hot, sweet tea between my chattering teeth. They didn't say, "I told you so." They didn't even look at me with pity. They just saw a man in trouble. I looked around that fire, at their faces lit by the flames. These people I'd mocked, I'd scorned. They were saving my life with their city wool blankets and their fancy tea. Never again, I tell you, never again. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you brand this on your heart, you don't get to choose who your angel is. Judgment is a luxury for warm fools on sunny days. Out in the real cold, you learn real fast that kindness don't wear a particular hat or talk a certain way.
It just is. Help can come from the last place you ever thought to look. Those folks, they taught me more about real strength in one night than I'd learned in a lifetime of being tough. Ain't that something? This one's for them, wherever they are. Now, pass me that blanket, would you, kiddo? Just seeing that snow out there gives me the shivers.
Well now, kiddo, you're digging into the tale of how I earned this here crooked smile and my best friend in the whole dadgum world. Ain't that something? This is the story of Big Tom, the orneriest cuss in 3 counties, and the day we tried to rearrange each other's faces. Yeehaw! Let's ride! Back in my day, disputes weren't settled with fancy lawyers or angry letters. They were settled the old-fashioned way, out behind the barn, with a circle of fellas cheering and a whole lot of foolishness. And Tom? Well, shut my mouth wide open. He was a mountain of a man, shoulders like a bull, a temper to match, and a face that looked like it had already lost an argument with a tractor. The feud was over the dumbest thing you ever heard of, a boundary line between our pa's pastures. Wasn't more'n a few feet of scrub grass, but our pride made it out to be the size of the whole Texas panhandle. We'd been glaring at each other from across fences for months, cursing each other's names. Dadgummit, I thought he was the devil's own nephew. It finally boiled over one Saturday at the stock auction. He said something, I said something back. Next thing I know, we're tumbling through a feed trough, fists flying, and the crowd is roaring, hop diggity dog. It wasn't a pretty fight. It was ugly, all grunts and dirt and the wet thud of a fist hitting flesh. He split my lip. I blackened his eye. He bloodied my nose, and I'm pretty sure I loosened one of his teeth. We were rolling in the dust, 2 stupid roosters fighting over a patch of dirt neither of us owned. I'll be a monkey's uncle. We fought till we couldn't lift our arms no more, till we were both just laying there on our backs in the dirt, panting like dogs, covered in blood and shame. The crowd got bored and wandered off, left us there, 2 beaten fools staring up at the same sky. And then, a miracle happened. Tom, breathing like a busted bellows, started to laugh. It was a weak, hurt, sputtering sound. "Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit," he wheezed. "You punch like my grandma, Joe." I was so surprised I started laughing too, even though it made my split lip burn like fire. "Your face is so ugly," I coughed out. "You're improving it." We just laid there, 2 enemies, laughing ourselves silly at our own stupidity. We'd given each other a beating over nothing. Absolutely nothing. When we finally sat up, a-chaining in places we didn't know we had, there wasn't any anger left. It had all been punched out of us. He offered me a hand, the same hand that had blackened my eye, and pulled me up. "Come on," he grunted. "I'll buy you a whiskey. You look like you need it more'n I do." I'll tell you what, we stumbled into the saloon, a bloody, dirty mess, and ordered 2 glasses of the cheap stuff. And we talked, not about fences, but about cattle and the weather, and our crazy fathers who'd started the whole dumb feud. We found out we agreed on more than we disagreed on. Ta-ta-ta. That was 60 years ago. We've been ranching side by side ever since. He was the best man at my wedding, helped me build this very porch. There ain't a man on this earth I trust more'n Big Tom. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you remember this when you're seeing red, sometimes you gotta knock the stubborn out of each other before you can see the brother inside. A foe is just a friend whose story you ain't heard yet. Never again, I tell you, never again will I judge a man by the fence between us. That fight was the best thing that ever happened to me. Cost me a tooth and gave me a brother. Ain't that something? This one's for you, Tom, you old ugly son of a gun. Now pass me that bottle. Telling this story makes me want to go punch him again just for old time's sake. Bless his heart.
You've gone and dug up the story of the Great Mustang debacle. This ain't a tale of triumph. It's a hymn to humility, sung by a fool with a cactus spine in his rear. Ain't that something? Hand me that bottle. This one requires medicinal sipping. Back in my day, every young buck with a hat and a dream wanted to catch himself a wild Mustang. Symbol of freedom, spirit of the West, all that poetic nonsense. I was no different. I'd seen this one stallion out on the mesa, a paint with a coat like storm clouds and thunder, and a fire in his eyes that said he'd rather die than be owned. Well, shut my mouth wide open, I took that personally. I figured it was a simple equation. My determination versus his wildness. Yeehaw, let's ride. I had a new lasso, my best horse, Bessie, and a head full of dreams thicker than molasses in January. I tracked him for 2 days, finally cornered him in a box canyon, or rather he let me think I'd cornered him. That horse was smarter than me from the get-go. He'd stand still, pretending to nibble at scrub, waiting for me to get close. Then he'd explode into a run, leaving me and Bessie in a cloud of his dust, and I swear his laughter. Dadgummit! On the 3rd day, I got lucky, or as it turned out, unlucky. My loop sailed true, settled right around that magnificent, defiant neck. Hot diggity dog, I thought I'd done it. I'd captured the wind. Well, butter my butt and call me a biscuit. That Mustang didn't even panic. He just turned his head, looked right at me with those proud, ancient eyes, and took off. It wasn't a run, it was an eruption. Bessie, good soul that she was, tried to dig in, but she was yanked off her feet like a tumbleweed. The rope burned right through my gloves. 1 second I was in the saddle, the king of the world. The next, I was airborne, flying through the air with the greatest of ease, until the world decided to teach me another lesson. I didn't land on nice soft dirt, oh no. The Lord, with a mighty fine sense of humor, guided my flight path directly into the one and only patch of prickly pear cactus in the whole dadgum canyon. I'll be a monkey's uncle. There was a soft, sickening thump, thump, thump as I landed right in the middle of it. Then silence. Then the pain. 1,000 tiny, fiery needles in my backside, my legs, my pride. I just laid there, stuck, looking up at the sky. I could hear the Mustang's hoofbeats fading into the distance. He'd taken my rope with him, like a trophy. Ta-ta-ta. He wasn't just free. He'd won. It took me an hour to carefully extract myself, and another week for your Grandma Clara to pick every last spine out of my hide with her tweezers, muttering the whole time about dumb boys and their dumb ideas. Bless her heart. So the moral of the story, kiddo, and you carve this into your saddle. Some spirits ain't meant to be caught. You can't put a rope on the wind, and you can't tame a heart that beats for the wild. Trying to only leaves you with a backside full of regret. Never again, I tell you, never again. That Mustang taught me more about respect than any man ever did. He wasn't mine to take. He was a thing to admire from a distance, a piece of the wild that makes this land worth living in. I'll tell you what, sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to let go. Ain't that something? Now, be a good kiddo, and don't make me sit up too straight. Some of those spines, I think they're still in there, reminding me. This one's for you, you storm-colored devil. Run free.